every so often here on this On the Mark podcast, we have a very special guest on with us, and Dana Dahlquist is one of those. And Dana, it was good to see you again here recently at the 25 PGA, and I'm thankful you would join us. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great. Having a good time.
Yeah, no kidding. The last time you were on here was in 2017, and you spoke about sequencing and timing, which are those are concepts where people sort of dare to go, because I remember Bob Jones back in the day said, if you could teach timing, you'd have the secret to everything kind of deal.
Yeah.
And you helped us there. And now we're going to go somewhere that's close to my heart with just misconceptions, because I find, and I don't know about you, but with the more information there is available, the more misunderstanding and the more misappropriation of stuff there is from the golfer at large. Do you experience the same thing?
Yeah. Yeah. I think those misconceptions are good because they lead us to discovery and truths.
Yeah.
You know, I'm pretty fortunate. I would say, like, I think you and I are close to the same, era in instruction, and we've been I would say the beneficiaries of technology.
Big time.
And I think that's a good thing because we had to run a lot of the mistakes, early on to find out what is truthful. And the fortunate thing is, like, our students are the beneficiaries also of that, and then also they might have had some errors along the way. But in any event, like, I think it's the best time to be a golf instructor. Especially if you're starting off. Like, if you're a young instructor right now, I think it's a great time, a really great time.
Yeah, it certainly is. And you're right. I mean, ours was trial and error. I mean, I was one of the Sony Handycam brigade. We had our cameras, and if we were lucky, we had footage of Ernie Els and Tiger Woods to compare people to.
Correct.
But now
Correct.
there's Sports Box, and there's 3D, and there's Force, you name it. So the information is rampant. To one of those misconceptions, I want to tee us off real fast.
Yeah.
And folks, I asked Dana, I'm like, okay, in your experience. So these are 3 ideas he pitched at me, and we're going to talk about this stuff.
Sure.
And the first one you hit me with, and I laughed because I'm like, dang, he's right. And it was, hitting down versus lower or less spin loft.
Yeah.
Because, if I call it Advil for the golf swing. Yeah, they go. Keep your head down. Keep your lead arm straight. Hit down to make the ball go up. Swing smooth, all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you hit me right off the bat with a misunderstanding is that you don't actually hit down. You just must you must decrease the spin loft for the golf ball to go better. So please go with us.
Yeah. So whenever I have these conversations, Mark, it's very much geared towards the amateur golfer, because that's who needs the information. And in ball striking, I would say you just need enough down with an iron to make good contact, and then you need to learn to deal off the loft to increase the ball speed. So those 2 vectors create your spin loft. So the amount down and the decreasing of loft. And on the flip side of that, on the PGA Tour, guys try to find a sweet spot. And especially when you get on the big stage, it's having enough spin on your irons, or the right amount of spin on your irons, to create consistency. So, but I think for 99% of the golfers out there, they either hit down too much and have too much dynamic loft, and those 2 combinations, i.e., might make a player swing faster. Or try to swing faster to get a club to go a desired distance. And so I think if we try to look at it from, like, TrackMan and Foresight and these devices, they measure that. But then if we kind of go back and we look at what the greats said, the greats, would say, let's say Ven Hogan's the guy, right?
Yeah.
He wanted to have forward shaft swing, so he was alluding to that principle. But without the metric to understand it, to deliver it to the people.
Yeah. Okay. I want to put this into context then, because you said at large, and I agree, that the amateur golfer, the club golfer listening to this, watching this on YouTube, whatever, they typically hit downward too much. But then they might get on a launch monitor and they look at these numbers and they don't really understand.
Yeah.
For context's sakes, let's say we got a 7-iron in our hand.
Yeah.
And I know we shouldn't tar this in like one brush, but
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
a fair downward attack angle with
Mhm.
a 7-iron for a club golfer would be how many degrees down?
Yeah. So a club golfer that swings, I'm just going to throw a number out there, like 80 miles per hour, hitting
Mhm.
3.5 down on a 7-iron is kind of like the sweet spot.
Yeah,
This is always related to club head speed. So it's like you said, not painting with a broad brush, right?
yeah.
So
Folks on YouTube, I'm having a moment. I'm celebrating because
yeah,
I'm digressing, but I'm sure you're with me. Too many golfers just look at the one number. I've got to get less down or more down. And
yeah,
they get mixed up with that. And then they're hitting down, but they don't have speed enough to get the ball in the air to go as much as it should. Right.
bingo.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, 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 no. Yeah, you nailed it. So like, there's a harmonious, you know, you want to look at it like maybe 3 to 4 different things that are a combination without getting too caught up with it, but it's like delivering the right amount of loft, obviously hitting the center of the club face is going to help that greatly.
Mhm.
And then hitting down just enough to present the right impact dynamics. Um, and then we could go maybe one step further is, I teach a lot of amateurs, and most of the amateurs are not very good at hitting, getting the resulting path to the right.
Yeah.
So some of the attempts to these players that are coming over the top, it was kind of a half truth that players, I have players that I see that come over the top that don't hit down at all
Hmm.
because they might be back.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So, but by and large, like creating hitting down just enough and hitting out just enough and getting the right, dynamic loft put in there is going to be a very good thing.
I feel like this is a good time to make
Hmm.
sure that folks understand that we swing in the thing in a somewhat circular motion and it's not a straight line.
Yeah.
Because so many golfers, as soon as they get a launch monitor, they are thinking like straight lines where, down is out and
Yeah.
up and in is more leftward.
Mhm.
Um, and so this way too, uh, maybe this is a cheat code and maybe I'm being naughty here, but we could improve downward by moving the ball back in the stance a commensurate amount
Sure.
if there's not enough shaft lean. Are you in agreement?
Sure. Yeah.
So you can
Yeah.
finagle stuff basically.
Sure. Yeah. And, trying to, not throw the baby out with the bathwater is, there's certain players in history that said, Lee Trevino being one, that when he observes amateurs and pro-ams, they had the ball too far forward in their stance.
Yeah. Huh?
So, yes, 100%. Yeah. If you play the ball back, it's gonna aid you in doing that.
I'm going down rabbit holes here, but
That's okay.
Your boy Bryson DeChambeau does the same thing. Um, he said to me, he goes, "You got to keep a rope around your waist. So you don't go off too fast. You know where your base camp is." So I
Yeah.
keep the rope around my waist here. You talk about Trevino. Yeah, he'd start with the ball forward and he'd shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. The next thing he was open and the ball was back. So
Yeah.
he's almost using geometry to make everything right.
Correct.
And then you got Nicholas and company who played the ball out of one position forward in the stance and would move the right foot around.
Yeah.
Then you'd have Sevi who would let the ball move all over the show. Same with
Yeah.
Sam Snead. You, Dana, expert, do you sit on like a stable ball position or are you okay with the thing floating around the place?
So it depends on the pattern.
Okay.
So, I have preferences to certain patterns, but it depends. So if I have players that, I mean, this does open a can of worms. So it depends a lot on
Yep.
like hand path stuff, where the
Yeah.
trajectory of the hand path is, and also how the bends of the body are working.
Mhm.
So what I commonly would say, Mark, is that if a player is like a stable pivot player,
Mhm.
um, minimal shifting of this hub,
Yeah, right.
that's going to indicate where if a player does or does not move that ball position.
Yeah.
And then conversely, if they are, then it's going to be kind of the opposite. And not to say to go back to my macro Grady days, but that was one of them, right? So like he had 4 patterns, depending on the era that you were in. And the grid would be different. So the grid would be effectively like in a stable pattern, like it's in a constant position, and then you can move that ball forwards and back to affect start line and curve.
Yeah, exactly.
So like Nicholas playing it more forward, what did that enable him to do? We'll hit less down on it,
Yeah, and hit
right?
the leftward for fades.
Yeah, 100%. So, and I think that's good because once again, going back to the amateur golfer, when they get a driver in their hands, they start moving that ball more and more forward. You start seeing trends that these players start aiming the baseline more and more to the right to get rid of the up and left.
Yeah. Huh?
And then their buddy who they're playing with is like, "Oh, hey, Bob, you're aiming too far right."
Yeah, I know it.
So yeah, it kind of, now that we know, we can say, "Oh, this is why you're doing that."
It's so liberating in a way, but I guess there's responsibility on the student and then by extension the teacher to kind of
Yes.
know where we fit in, because you talk about the centralized person and the person that drifts left and right a little bit, right and left a bit more, where instead of going, well, I should do this and I don't do that and I do this, it's like, this is who I am. So,
Yeah.
what I'm going to work on is not necessarily retooling myself. We'll get to this in a minute, sure. But understanding, like, if I continue to do this, what am I likely to deliver and what ball position should I play from in order to get the correct amount of spin loft to get
Yeah.
the maximum amount of my strike? Yes?
Correct. Yeah, correct. And I think that's more prevalent probably at this stage when you look at maybe the PGA Tour player or LPGA Tour player that has a particular pattern, and they hired some guy like me to make an assessment of their golf swing. And and by the way, like 15 years ago, or maybe even less than that, it would be looking through a particular set of eyes that would have preference to going the direction that I prefer. And now that we have very good data as far as like, hey, X amount of PGA Tour players, LPGA do this, and these are the ranges, and we have data on ball flight. We don't have to make substantial changes to influence the outcome and make consistency.
Yeah.
Now, this might also play a part to the amateur golfer, because if they're moving outside of ranges that are not presented by the best players in the world, and I think kind of we overlook the fact that these guys and girls are very, very good athletes.
Yeah.
That should be the foundation to everything anyway. Then you maybe want to start reducing maybe some of the laterals and some of the verticals to influence better rotation to swing on a circle. So that is the argument.
Well, I know where you sit, given your history with MORAD and McAgrady and Company. I've always been, there are a number of golf books that have influenced me, and I've been lucky to know a lot of really good players and teachers like yourself. But I sit with Jack Nicklaus, who would have his head kind of held by Jack Grout.
Yeah.
He'd move the ball forward in his stance and learn how to move around that circle and catch the ball in commensurate areas of the arc.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you can sort of develop something. That's to me what Scotty Scheffler does so well.
Yeah.
But despite all goings on, he nails the grip every single time.
Yeah.
Diligent about alignment, and the ball position is on point every single time. And then you put a video of him up, and everyone says, "Well, the ball's too far back." And I'm like, for the driver, with what he does, it's in exactly the right place for him to hit that little baby cut of his every single time.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the detail, right? The devil's in the details. And it's also in the commitment to those details, which he is.
Yeah.
I think that's the part that just observationally that every player out here is very committed to what they're doing so they can commit to the shot they're going to hit. And probably in competition, the best or the most committed to hitting those shots. And my biggest learning piece, I would say, in the last 5 years is understanding that if you can't commit to hitting a shot, even if you're a 10 handicap, you need to develop a routine and a system that allows you to do that. So number one, like, you can have more fun and shoot better scores. But if you're standing out there playing golf and you're trying to tee off the first hole at your local golf club or golf course for that matter, and you can't commit to what you're doing, you might need to adjust how you're practicing. Maybe it is not detailed enough, and maybe it's not specific enough. It's too broad. It's too complex. So those details of alignment, grip, ball position, educating what impact should feel like should be number one.
Yeah. Folks, so you understand how this conversation came about.
Okay.
Danny was on the back side of the range at Quail Hollow. I came walking by. I was doing research. I'd had Bryson, his client, the day before, and so we just caught up. And it's amazing how when you and I are together, we'll start somewhere and end somewhere completely else in about 5 minutes. Okay. So I've got you off script, but I'm going to keep you here now because you talked about the details and then you talked about the practice. And you're probably going to touch on this later in one of the other 2 points. But here's the thing. I think golfers, the golfer at large again, maybe even the aspirant professional,
Mhm.
doesn't really know who's a talented kid or talented lady or whatever, young girl, but they don't really know they know enough to kind of be dangerous.
Sure.
And then when they go and practice, they think the swing change or something is more like, well, I've got to line up the top of my backswing, or I've got to get my trail elbow in a certain position.
Yeah.
Where they could be doing that stuff, but if they're missing for their pattern with something like ball position or whatever the case might be, they're having to react anyhow,
Hmm.
thing to the target somehow.
Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
feeling where I'm going here?
Yeah.
I'd love
Yeah.
your commentary.
Yeah. So I think and speaking to juniors on this,
Yeah.
you know, I'm looking at the tennis court next to me.
Yeah.
Every tennis player who is returning a ball is focused on a spot or an area, which
Mhm.
is a target. And golf, when we get too internal into the mechanics and we lose the external of what the shot picture looks like, then you're separating yourself from a playable feel or a routine that you could actually respond to.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why I have conversation. I'm not a putting coach for that matter, but most people I talk to, they putted really well when they're 12 and 13 years old because they're very visual and they're focused on making the putt.
Mhm.
They didn't go into, oh, my elbows are here, my shoulders are here, my eyes are here. And I always attribute that to like Aaron Baddeley, who
Oh,
is
yeah.
very visual, right?
Yeah.
And walks up and putts it and runs his routine. So um, I think if you develop that within, and then making it something as a target-based factor, everything that you do, your outcome is going to be better
Okay.
always.
Yeah, well, Bryson is a lot of that, surprisingly to people.
Yeah, yeah,
I do want to put a bow on this because the golf swing junkies, I'm sure, are going, I want to hear more about spin loft and I want to get more
yeah,
shaftly. Because
yeah.
it's one of those sexy things, you want to have less early extension and more shaftly, and the
Yeah, yeah.
vernacular, right? If you were to say to someone, let's say they got really buckled through contact and they're adding too much loft,
Mhm.
a drill or something for someone to go and do on the range, just to
Sure.
feel like they get a degree or two more of shaftly and they get that face beefed up a little bit. What would that be?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of them would be, well, number one is learn. Okay, so this is square. I'm sitting down in a chair right now, but if I lean the handle, the loft is pointing to the right.
Exactly.
So bow the wrist, turn the arm over. Now the face is closing. Now my body is square. My hips are probably open a little bit and my weight's on my left foot. So if
Yeah.
I just get good at doing that and then hit the ball, I'm going to start de-lofting the club. And that would be like every amateur should probably do that. What they tend to do is they tend to grip the club stronger,
Yeah.
lean the shaft, and then go back,
Yeah.
add loft, and they still cut it or pull it. So that would be kind of the first one I
All
would
right.
get people to do.
Which I love. And folks, if you're listening on audio, what Dana was doing there, he was sitting on a chair. He didn't even have a club in his hand, and he assumed his grip. Then he just got his lead hand sort of bowed the wrist a little bit more. But when you do that, you lean the shaft. The face is looking to the right if you're a right
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
So then you got to rotate that forearm counterclockwise, anti-clockwise a little.
Yeah.
So here, Dana, what about the brigade of people that are especially noisy on social that are talking about rate of closure of club face and stuff, and
Yeah.
there shouldn't be any forearm rotation? I mean,
Yes.
it's so far off freaking base. So have a go, please.
Yeah. So, like, if you want to go down that road and you want to have the left wrist go into extension more to slow down the rate of closure, you're chest is going to have to open up a lot more, and you're going to have to side bend a lot more.
Yeah.
So there's this, like, that's a very complex way of doing it. But I would say this, that 90% of the PGA Tour, if you left them alone, are probably going to hook the golf ball, right? They're going to hook it.
Yep,
They're going to deal off it.
Yeah.
So like learn that skill first. And then once you've learned that skill, you can start learning to take curve off. So like you start overdrawing golf balls and hitting them too low and too hot. Then we can talk about rate of closure.
I'm going to stay there for a minute too. Man, I'm completely off script. One day,
Sorry.
that's fine. One day when I die, it's in my will for my wife to spread my ashes on one other golf course, right?
Okay.
And then I want a plaque somewhere. And I started teaching golf in 1996.
Mhm.
So, great. Okay. And I just want a plaque somewhere that says, to Mark, who spent his entire teaching life teaching slices of the ball to hook the golf ball and hookers not to hook it.
Yeah.
And that's to what you say there. Learn
Yeah.
to hook the thing properly, and then you can mitigate, as
Yeah.
opposed to just trying to figure out everything else.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. Like if you do that, your handicap will -10 very quickly. Like, I don't care where you're at. I mean, generally speaking, if you're a 5 handicap, this is not a conversation, but if you're a 15, you're going to become a 5 real quick.
Absolutely.
And, you know, that proximity to the whole thing is going to become a lot better. So yeah, that's kind of where I would hang my hat starting off. And then the intricacies of taking the curve off become a conversation.
I would advocate too, with what you're saying, that now I'm thinking Jordan Spieth in my head and a few of these kind of guys around the greens. You're going to tighten up your greenside pitching and stuff a whole lot quicker as well.
Yeah. 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 But they're not going to fall back and throw wrist extension in and
Drop kick,
drop kick it or skinny it across the green.
drop kick thins. Okay.
Yeah. Wednesday on a PGA Tour can be dangerous on the chipping green.
Yeah. Okay. So the first misunderstanding or misconception was hitting down versus just delivering a little less loft, but squaring it up, because you can lean the shaft and point the face in a weak direction.
Right.
The second misconception was, and I found this interesting, and you just said how to make changes. And I had a number of questions behind that. And the first one was, well, what if wholesale changes aren't necessary?
Sure.
Because I'm come from the era, as you do too, where we've got the video picture and you got the other picture, and like, well, Ernie else looks like that, and you look like this, and then you start trying to piece it all together.
Yeah.
Mistakenly. I'm embarrassed about that now. So help us when the changes are necessary. How do we go about doing this properly?
Yeah. So let's just say it's something that really would help an amateur. Let's say it's something as simple as sliding off the golf ball.
Yeah, right.
So obviously, like we have to come to a decision why we're fixing that player. So what we start doing is I like using more of like exaggerating it is the best term.
Yeah.
Getting on the other side of it, because it's always easier to reduce. And so I've never seen, I wouldn't say never, but I say most of the time, never is a bad word, Mark, sorry. But I don't normally see players come back for a second lesson if it's a month later or 2 months later, overdoing anything.
Yeah.
I know they say, oh, I might have overdone it. Well, you're getting the same results. So you didn't overdo anything. You just got comfortable. And I think that's the first, like if I was picking a vector, it's like, okay, if I'm going to reduce the lateral, I'm going to push harder off the right to feel like I'm pushing to the left to find center.
Yeah.
And it might be pushing long enough off the right, you know, not just impulse it, to reduce a lateral. And then conversely, the other way, like we would call that braking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say like that would be a good thing to do, is always like, okay, well, show me exactly what we're discussing and show me on like a big picture what the exaggeration would look like. And I would say the toughest one to ever make an adjustment, which isn't the first one unless it's egregious, would be maybe the grip. You know, the grip is a very challenging long-term, because if somebody's been golfing for any amount of time, they have an attachment to the target, how they hold that golf club. And so, yeah, that's how I would answer that.
How about this too? because you bring up a good point, because everything in life is like we all fit into a spectrum, and the overall spectrum's kind of here, but then we fit our own little world as somewhere within the overall spectrum. And I
Yeah.
might feel like I'm moving to the left side completely, but I still might be to the right of the overall spectrum of where things sit. So
Yeah.
that's the reality of it. And that's what a good teacher like you will do. But how about this? I see it time and time again where someone goes for a lesson and then the next thing they're learning something difficult like the grip, or like you say, let's say we less lateral, so we're centralizing and we're using our feet better. And then they're like, well, what about the driver? And then and then they're trying to go full bore, trying
Yeah.
to learn some new pattern, and it just turns disastrous. Where do you sit with that?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's why there's always a discussion that's the lead in. It's like, what do you presently struggle with?
Yeah.
Um, and okay, I'm overcutting golf balls. I'm hitting them too high. My 9 iron, my 6 iron are going the same distance. It's like, okay, well, like we have to lead in with, let's say, getting the ball to start on a proper line, not left.
Yeah.
So I kind of have this hierarchy, which is like, okay, let's focus on making good contact, starting the ball on the intended line, adding curve to it, and then adding power to it. So like those are the four.
Okay.
So I don't just lead in with, I'm going to carry the ball 300 yards, because that's not going to happen if I don't hit the center of the face anyway.
Exactly.
So that's why there's like this hierarchy. And then once that's kind of attained, like, oh, I don't understand how to strike the ball pretty solidly and start on the line I want. Well, now we're going to get the swing direction, moving in a direction that allows you to curve it the way you want.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I kind of would lead in, and it keeps people kind of on a path, at least for success.
Yeah, I think you made a very good point there too, and you kicked the whole thing off. And I want to visit this again because it may have sounded trite, and maybe people didn't really pay attention because they were waiting for the sexy stuff.
Right.
But the good teacher and the good student, they consult for a while. They're like, okay, who are you? What are the tendencies? What are the goals here?
Yeah.
What is possible? And before you just go, well, you should be doing this and you aren't doing that, and you should be, you're like, okay, this is kind of what's necessary, and we're going to go about it in a constructive way, and you need to
Yeah.
prepare yourself for this.
Yeah. And I think for any amateur out there who's maybe shopping for a teacher, you're kind of shopping for a little bit of a relationship on how to fix your golf swing.
Yeah.
And that teacher needs to understand that. They need to kind of be around you to see how you practice, what your scores are, what your tendencies are. But like if you go in and you're like, oh, I'm going to take a lesson from Dana or Sean Foley or Mark Blackburn or you or whoever, for the novelty, right? Which may be a curse, but like we don't get that. Like we don't get that sense of what happens after. And so I think it's important that, you develop a relationship with your coach, and then make sure like, oh, this is what I do when I practice. Like, oh, I didn't know that you only hit a 7 iron when you go to the driving range.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's a problem. Like those things need to be presented so that the path gets more and more clear for you.
Yeah, I would say this too, because too often, and I'm saying this as one golf instructor to another. Well, I'm a recovering golf teacher because I'm a broadcast guy now. I got a lot less gray hair. I think at times changing the swing is almost intellectually lazy. Because
Yeah.
a good teacher like yourself, you go on the course with folks, and you could find that certain errors are situational. When this ball below the feet, wind off the left, whatever, then the mistake gets made.
Yeah.
Yet,
Yeah.
for different lie, everything's okay. So we got to have to deal with as well when it comes to making changes, right?
Sure. I did a YouTube video about a month ago. So a college player turned pro, took her to the first tee. Golf swing looks beautiful on the range, draws every ball, driver speed like, 97 miles per hour. I'm thinking this is going to be easy. And we get up and she's aimed too far to the left and then tilts back, blocks it. And to your point, there we are, right?
Yeah.
So, it's just we need more information as a coach. I think giving it some time to see what occurs is really, really important.
Let's help the coaches, shall we? Because we've just talked to the students.
Yeah.
Because if you're a good coach now, you might be listening to this going, oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mark,
Because here's the
that's,
thing. You got to be very, very disciplined with yourself to
yeah.
not go ahead, get after some person's swing with a chisel just because it doesn't look right.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of, I've been pretty vocal about this for several years. It's like, okay, so not to sound arrogant here, but like I do have a responsibility to help other teachers.
Yeah.
And if you have a platform at all in the golf industry, like you're here to grow the game. Like, what does that mean? Well, from the coaching aspect, it's to develop more coaches and empower them to, you know, enjoy giving lessons more and hopefully improve their skill set. Doesn't mean I'm right, but you
Yeah.
know, I think that's the big piece here. So my at least some of my experiences might not be the same, but I'm going to at least allude what my experiences are on the driving range.
Hmm. Brilliant. And again, I mean, there was a very funny video that some dude did on Instagram here recently in 2025. I shouldn't date this, but he's got a video of Scotty Scheffler down the line. It
Yeah.
looks like it looks like the fourth hole at Torrey Pines, South Course.
Okay. Yeah.
And he takes it back. He goes, "Yeah, well, club face is way too open at the top of the swing. I mean, and then on the way down, a lot of early extension. That face is wide open. From here, you're going to block it or hook the thing. And oh, you squared one up, but you're going to have to work 25 lessons with me. We should be just fine, kind of thing."
Right.
And I laughed like you because it was brilliantly done,
Yeah.
but it was just embarrassingly true.
Yeah.
Where so many folks are taken for a ride, and some of the teachers are making a mockery of the whole thing. And I'm calling people out because it's my responsibility here too
Yeah.
to say we have a responsibility as instructors
Yeah.
to help the golfer find their best. And I'm going to use Bryson now, Occam's razor. Find the simplest, most easy to apply solution there is.
Yeah.
This is not rocket science.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your closing thought for that, though.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you find your authentic self, know your limitations physically. I think that's important.
Yeah.
You don't want to, oh, I'm going to do speed training when not capable of doing such. And I think the low hanging fruit is kind of our lead in was make solid contact, influence that spin loft and get, a repeatability of pattern that is very simple that you can wake up and do a quick warm up and enjoy the game. Like it's pretty simple.
Okay, but I sold you a red herring, so I said closing thought. I meant for point number two. I've got you
Oh,
for two more.
okay. Okay.
Not
Fair.
getting out of my hair that quickly. But the next part of this, number three of the three, you talked about heading down versus better spin loft, how to make changes, and then the timelines involved.
Yeah.
Because there's a reality to this. I mean, you're not going to fix this overnight. I don't care who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's kind of a three-prong situation with this. So you get the information
Yeah.
that you or want to prescribe to. Then the middle one is develop understanding surrounding it.
Mhm.
Okay. So like you're not just Google mapping it, like you're going to understand it. So you understand the path. And then you're going to create a timeline around it. And so if it is spin loft, like you're not just going to grab a 3-iron, right? You're going to probably go, okay, well, I'm going to hit 10 balls online. I'm going to do that, 3 times. And I'm going to start it right, hit it low, and draw it. Like I'm just going to do that. And then I'm going to try to get 10 in a row, 10 in a row, 10 in a row. And then once I've done that, then I'm going to move up to a 9-iron, the next day. So like you're developing some strategy pertaining around that. That would actually be something I would do with beginner golfers. It would be like, okay, like 30 balls, you got 10, 10, 10. And then this week you're going to successfully try to get, 20% of the first 10 in the right location. Now I'm a fan of filming because you can kind of see things. And I'm a fan of 3D because you can definitely see things. And then if you just so happen to have the ability to have a TrackMan or a Foresight or something like that, you can see those numbers.
Yeah.
But that's what I would do.
Yes, and a lot of what you say there, because you like, okay, if you hit your 30 balls, I want you to do 20% correct.
Yeah.
There's a healthy amount of expectation management on the go here too,
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
from the teacher and the player's point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you don't want them all perfect the first time because you're not learning anything.
Okay.
When you're riding a bike, you have to fall down so you become proficient. So the proficiency of understanding what it feels like to make an error is huge. It's the best teacher you have. So, but that's again, you have the understanding piece, in front of that. So you're like, oh, I know it. My observation is this ball launch too high, start too far right, or cut. Okay, got it. Go back, double down, exaggerate the feel on the other side of it. Got it. Ball curves proper.
Love it. Yeah. And know this, people. I say this, I hold my own ass to the fire when I say this to every new client. I'm like, if you are doing the right thing, the ball will go better.
For sure.
If you're not doing the right thing, well, if you're doing the wrong thing, it's going to get accidental if it goes
Yeah.
better. I mean, it's going to happen once in a while.
Yeah.
So if you and the teacher are doing the right thing, you should see improvement. It might not be all the time because you're learning something new, but you should see something different. You should
Yes.
get worse before you get better, is what I'm trying to say. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say every lesson that I give, for the most part, there are at least glimpses of
Yeah.
things that are good, and things that are going in the right direction. And whether we change the picture of the video that, oh, I was chicken winging it, and all of a sudden, boom, you're there.
Mhm.
Okay, that's an indicator. Ball flight, probably the best one, comes out hotter. There you go.
Uh-huh.
So whatever it is, or I'm not sliding anymore, or I'm actually making a bigger looking rotation, or I'm not bending my elbows, whatever it is. Like, those are like, oh, now I have understanding on how to fix those things. But all of them should relate back to the ball flight.
And I'm going to go a little deep on this one too, because you've got to also develop the mindset to look for the good. Because golf, for the better player, we start to almost become people that look, because you improve by reducing bad. It's the
Yes.
mindset to look for those glimpses you reference.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's important. It's really important. So this kind of goes back to like my archaic way of thinking, though. It's like, it's funny. I think Sean said this like 15 years ago or 12 years ago, somewhere in there. I'm losing track of time. He's like, oh, like, I keep running into people that work with you because I can tell that they work with you. They have like a look, right? So
Okay,
like,
right.
there's okay, fair. Like, at
You
that
know what?
point,
I could have said the same thing about Sean Foley a few years ago, but
probably, yeah,
okay, right.
probably.
And that is.
So we're all, as teachers, we're all guilty of some of that, right? It's
Mhm.
like, at some point. But now I think the good news is, like, we're a little bit more liberal on those things because we understand principles. But yeah, I'd say, like, if a student can leave a lesson, change the pitcher, change the ball flight, have a working plan, then successfully, as a coach, like, you've done your job. And there's an expectation, at least by the student, that, hey, now I have some tools that I can work with.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Brilliant. Okay, the closing shot. People want to know because your most famous client is Bryson DeChambeau,
Mhm.
who I've got a lot of time for. He's a great guy.
Mhm.
He is ever evolving, is
Yep.
how I would describe him.
Yep.
He takes great ownership of what he does.
Yep.
If something goes wrong, it's like it's on me. And I'm saying as if I'm Bryson.
Yep.
A lesson that the fans, the viewers, the listeners can learn from Bryson DeChambeau, just something about how he approaches his craft, because it is fascinating. And for a while, he was that, like, everyone knew him as the mad scientist.
Mhm.
But I knew the guy that was just uncovering every base, basically, and figuring out
Yep.
what's best for him. What would you say?
Yeah. So, it doesn't really. So I'll say it like this: it doesn't matter if it's almost like that could also be Tiger Woods. Like, we could just put a different name there.
Mhm.
And so I think it goes back to consistency and, like, being very diligent at hitting the shot that's needed to play the game.
Mhm.
So, and I would say, like, Tiger was the same. I would say even Nicholas was the same.
Yeah.
I would say Hogan was the same. Like, he preached his way to hit the golf ball. And that is the key. I think, like, hit it one way, get really, really proficient at it so that you can rely on it in any situation. And, Tiger's able to do that when you're watching him at his peak, he was able to do that. And you don't need to do too much to get the job done.
I want you to go a little further there because if I'm understanding you correctly, I agree. You'd rather perfect one shot than try and hit 5 or 6 average.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you're at any level of the game.
Yeah.
And Bryson, the Bryson that I know, all he tries to do is hit a right starting draw every single time.
Yeah.
Yes? Is this still
Yes.
okay?
Yeah. Yeah. He can do whatever he wants, but yes.
Yeah, that's his go-to shot. He's like, I
Sure.
want the path here, I want the face there, I want the ball to be doing this stuff. And if
Yep.
that's not working out, we'll check the club. And if the club's performing, then we'll check my golf swing. This is how we work.
Correct. Yes.
Super simple. It's super simple, actually.
It is. Yeah. But like I said, like I don't think, once again, I don't think, Tiger might have said he hit 7 different shots,
Hit
but
that stinger more than
observationally,
anything else, man.
observationally,
Yeah.
not the case, and same with Rory McIlroy, right? So like same with all of them, I think and I think the players that are listening to this at home need to go, okay, like I could hit, let's say, an 8-iron 155 yards without swinging too fast, in quotation marks, and launch it to the right window, the right amount of spin at the right carry distance, a little draw or pretty straight, and rely on that and just get really good at that every single time. I look at it like, during, this is completely off subject matter, but like during COVID, like I learned how to cook. Well, what's one of those things? Well, how to cut vegetables. What are your knife skills? Right? It's very,
mine sucks.
nothing fancy. Well, yeah, mine's not that good either. But like just learning the basics and getting really, really good at the basics. It's all about that. I don't need to be a sushi level, make roses out of cucumbers, but just simple chopping techniques.
What a sweet analogy to close the whole thing, because you've then put a bow on the entire conversation about misunderstanding and misconception.
Yeah.
Because most folks, they listen to this podcast, they go on Instagram, YouTube channels and stuff, and they hear stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff is sexy.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
right.
Well, that's what sells, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the old saying? Like, I'm not sponsored by Land Rover or anything like that, so I could say this, but you drive a Land Rover into the bush, you drive a Toyota out.
Well,
So
it's how it is, because it's a misconception.
yeah.
All of this
Yeah.
stuff it's all a part of this big puzzle, which is how you present the club face to its path in relation to the target line. And you do that consistently, you're on your way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
The man's a legend. He's Dana Dahlquist. Dana, share for the folks where they can find you, social, YouTube, stuff like that.
Yeah. So just Dana Dahlquist. That's it, on Instagram, and on I think it's just Dahlquist Golf on YouTube.
And if you're watching on YouTube, he's wearing his US Open Inside the Ropes lanyard. All the best this week, my friend.
Thank you.
Fingers crossed for you guys.
You bet. Thank you.